I actually had a plan to ask you the question, about metaphysics, about how you define metaphysics or understand metaphysics, because I imagine that, once this particular interview goes public, that many people in the audience won't understand a lot of the philosophical terms and especially the type of books, very heavy books that you get published. This is, philosophy is not easy, right, for the average person. So, what is metaphysics? What is it?
Well, metaphysics is defined in our tradition usually as al-mawjud bima huwa mawjud. It's the study of the existent qua existent, and that definition goes back to Aristotle via Avicenna. That's not actually my favorite definition of metaphysics, but it's a good start. But there's a lot of truth to it. And what it basically means, it sounds completely incomprehensible. The reality is it's very, very simple indeed. We all exist. And there are certain properties that we have simply in virtue of the fact that we exist. So this is a completely universal and very, very, very general level. So it applies to anything which exists. Anything which exists, one finds on further analysis, possesses certain other properties. And so, for example, everything which exists, and I'm speaking in terms of this particular definition, the Aristotelian definition, everything which exists has an essence. Right? You already know that before you know what the thing is. Are we talking about a tree or an angel or a human? It doesn't matter. The existent qua existent has to have an essence. It has to be an individual, right? There are no universal things walking about. There are individuals walking around. It has to be a unity, but it has to be a multiplicity as well, which is unified in some way such that it's one thing governed by the principle of identity.
Right.
It has to be a possible being, and I'm not talking about, obviously this gets more complex because obviously Allah Ta'ala is the existence.
Right.
He's wajib al-wujud. But let's say on the level of created existence, anything which exists has to be possible, otherwise it wouldn't be here in the first place.
Right.
And to understand possibility, you have to understand impossibility, right? And necessity. And there are aspects there are logical propositions, for example, which are necessary. The concept of necessity also enters into our world, right? It's not just in terms of the necessary. And we have to be related, if we exist, we also have to be related to different types of causality, right? It entails being related, being an effect, and also being in some senses a cause, right? So that's just to give a very basic example of metaphysics as what's called first philosophy, which is, and it's actually quite dry in that sense of metaphysics, because it's the highest science which regulates all of the other sciences. Why? Because all of the other sciences are existence. So anything that we find out about existence qua existence is also going to apply to all of those other levels of being.